Good morning. Today is May 28th, and I'll call the Deferred Comp Advisory Committee meeting to order. If we could start with roll call, please.
Good morning. My name is Tyler Vernon. I will be stepping in for admin support today for today's deferred compensation meeting. I'll begin with roll call. Jennifer Goodman.
Here.
Sandy Regalo.
Here.
Fonsai Kyokum.
Present.
Jeff Woltkamp.
Here.
Greg Frank.
Here.
Dawn Narayan. No. And then Sunny Dhaliwal is not here today. If there are any other members who would like to introduce themselves at today's meeting, I now open the floor for that.
Oriana Mahoney, Employee Benefits and Development Manager.
All right, we'll move
Job
on.
Stable Nationwide.
Good morning, Brenda DeVecchio with Nationwide.
Vincent Galindo, consultant with Fiduciary Consulting Group.
Good morning, Ben Lozier with Nationwide.
All right, thank you, everyone. We'll go ahead and move on to approval of minutes from the quarterly meeting of February 26th.
Just a quick comment on the minutes. The overall program plan summary has $1 million behind it. Makes it like $1 trillion, so just might want to remove that M behind it. The middle of the page, page 1.
Okay, thank you. Do I have a motion to approve with that correction?
This is Fonse. I'll make a motion to approve with that correction.
This is Sandy. I will second.
All right, we have a motion, a second. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. All right, next on the agenda is public comment. Mr. Vernon, any public comment?
I don't believe there is any public comment right now. If anybody has public comment, you can speak now. If there's no public comment, I will move on to the program status report.
Great. So John, you want to start us off?
Yes, thank you. And good morning. Can you all hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Yes.
Terrific. I'm just going to share my screen here. And hopefully you can all see the quarterly report on the screen.
Yes, we can see it.
Excellent. So just wanted to take just a few minutes to go over the nationwide quarterly report for both the 405 or the 457 and the 401A plan. The first page is a plan summary. As you can see, the top row is the assets, the beginning balance back on the first of the year. And then we have the activity throughout the year. We have contributions. This is the far right column. So we total up the 457 and the 401A. The far right column is total money in. The column or the row below that is total money out for the quarter. We subtract fees and loans, and the gain loss is the market loss that the plan was subject to for the first quarter based on the results of the various mutual funds that are in your plan. So your plan started at 677 million, finished the quarter at 661 million. So what I'll do is just go through a couple of other pages of data. On the overview page, the only thing I'll point out on this page are the new accounts. So we had 142 new enrollments in the first quarter, really good number. The quarter prior to that, we had 167. So Brenda's doing an outstanding job getting as many county participants signed up as she can. So just wanted to point out the nice results that we've seen with respect to enrolling your employees into the deferred compensation plan. Participation, we're almost to 8,000 on the upper left, 7,941. I'm sure by probably the next couple of quarters, we will most likely hit that number. And so really exciting milestone coming up. Below that, we have the average balance in your plan of roughly 83,000. So a nice, healthy average balance. And then the wheel chart we show each quarter, it shows the percent of assets held by participants that are employed and also terminated. So your plan is roughly a 54 to 44% ratio, still over 50%, which is very good. And then to the right of that, we have Roth and Pro account usage. So Roth is, again, after tax. Your participants can contribute to Roth or any portion of their deferrals into Roth. So there's 1,598 participants with about 15.5 million. The Pro account is our term for managed accounts. So we're going to have sort of a deeper dive into Pro account here in a few minutes with Ben. But we do track that on quarterly reports if that's something that the county wants to add. Other optional strategies, again, we already saw Roth. On the lower left, we have SDBA, or self-directed brokerage account through Schwab. There's $2.2 million of Schwab assets in your plan, 13 participants. You see the average balance is roughly double what your average balance is in your plan, which is pretty common with respect to self-directed brokerage accounts. I think almost every plan I have, the average account balance in Schwab is usually about double. So doesn't stand out, but it's right around 170,000. For money in, we look at the current period right in the middle of the page, and we have the prior period just to the left of that. So for this particular quarter, the plan had about $9.2 million in cash flow coming into Nationwide. Most of that was salary contributions or payroll of $7.7 million. The rest was things like transfers, et cetera, some self-directed money coming over. And we show where your future deferrals are being invested when Nationwide receives money from your participants. Right now, about 54% of every dollar is going into a target date fund, which really helps with diversification. And large cap is your second most popular investment option, at least for new contributions, at roughly 18%. And then in third place, we have the Nationwide Fixed Fund at 11%, or 11 cents on each dollar is going into something that's guaranteed and doesn't have any market risk associated with it. Money out, 10.6 went out for the current quarter. Last quarter, we had 13 go out, so about a $2.3 million difference. You can see the differences here. So we had fewer rollovers out, and then the RMDs made up the lion's share of the difference between the two quarters. Required minimum distributions, most people take those in the fall, in the fourth quarter, which is why the numbers very large for last quarter and came down considerably for the first quarter because fewer people take those RMDs. So without that, again, the numbers was more in line with other quarters. So 10.6 out, again, most of that in the form of either just people taking it in cash or rollovers. So about 4.7% of that money, or sorry, 4.7 million was rollovers out. Assets in your plan. So we looked at money in. This is your current balance sheet of all of your assets in your plan, and we break it out by percentage. And so we show that 54% of new money is going to a target date fund, but roughly 25.4% of average participant balances are in a target date fund. So that percentage is going to keep increasing. Bonds, about 5% of total assets are in bond funds. You can see fixed assets, cash, that's Nationwide Fixed Fund. About 20% of your plan is not subject to market risk. Like most plans, you have a little bit of money in international at 4%, a lot of money in large cap, and then you can see the mid, small, and specialties make up about 8 or 9% total of those. So most of the assets are held by target dates, fixed, and large cap funds. We also list out every single investment option in your plan by assets, and we also list participant counts in each one in case there is ever the need to do a fund to change. We can let you know the impact. So jumping to loans on the upper left, you can see the average or the total loan balance in the plan is about 3.8 million. There are 391 active loans. Last quarter, we opened 42 and closed 39, so just a net 3. So not a lot of loan growth. In the upper right, we have the average loan balance in your plan of just under $10,000. So not a lot to talk about with loans, pretty consistent with other quarters, not a lot of usage, but still a nice feature that your employees have if and when they need to borrow against their deferred comp account. And then I'm going to wrap up with our enablement and engagement page. We look at statistics like e-delivery, where you're 74% adoption, online accounts, 70% adoption. And these numbers have gone up considerably since Nationwide took over as your record keeper. And Brenda does a great job when she meets with your employees one-on-one. to make sure that they have online accounts, that they use our software, that they understand the tools and services that Nationwide provides. And so we're all above benchmark. Distributions, about 3/4 of those are being done online. And then you can see things like beneficiaries and emails on file. We're doing really well with respect to both. So you're almost 90% with email or with your beneficiaries. And then really, really good with emails. Over 93% of your participants have an email on file, which is great because it helps us send messages to your employees based on really based on age and where they're at in their careers. So I've said a lot. I'll pause, see if there's any questions about the nationwide data. I'll also pass it on to Brenda to just give a field update and let you know what's going on with her.
John, this is Fonzie. I do have a question. You said that the RMDs are typically occur in the fourth quarter. Is that for holidays, or is there some sort of advantage that is there a reason why they're doing it at that quarter?
Well, the main reason is there's a lot of defaults. And if you haven't selected one or taken it, Nationwide will automatically pay you out.
Okay.
But
Got
it's
it.
just really
Okay,
preference.
that makes sense. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, people like my dad, he watches the market every single day, and when the market's at a record high, he takes that distribution. So his could be any time during the year, but most participants, generally speaking, wait till the fourth quarter to do that. It's just, and also in ERISA 401k plans, it's always done around, I don't know, like September, October. So that's just how retirement plans typically operate. But your employees can do it anytime they want throughout the year, as long as they satisfy the annual RMD, which is roughly on average around 4% of their balance.
Thank you.
All right, Brenda, turn it over to you.
Your microphone is off, Brenda.
Yep, sorry about that. So good morning. My name is Brenda DeVecchio, and I'm your local retirement specialist there at San Joaquin County. And so I'm in charge of connecting and educating your employees about this retirement benefit. Of course, it's a voluntary benefit, so I'm always trying to educate people about the benefits of joining the plan. We do quarterly webinars for the county. Basically, my team does that for Northern California. So basically, I'm going to share the PowerPoint real quick for the one that we did last quarter, since we're really focused on Q4. So you might have seen something like this go out even recently. We do have a new quarter coming up for the county, but we cover various topics, anywhere from enrolling in the plan to, your next best steps as your mid-career, all the way to planning for retirement and so on. So the average attendance for this was a little bit lower than usual. We had an average of about 4 people over all 5. Some were higher, some were lower. We had a little more interest in the nearing retirement session. But we really appreciate your partnership in trying to get these notifications out to your staff so that we can really deliver the education and support that your employees need, not just as they are saving, but also retirees. John mentioned RMDs, and I actually met face to face with one of our retirees. She was turning age 75, and she needed help doing the distribution. I also had somebody meet with me during the benefit fair over at San Joaquin General Hospital. So just really glad to be part of the benefit fair. It's a great opportunity to connect with your staff. I know the county puts in a lot of effort, and the employees definitely appreciate it. Of all the locations that we visited, most of them I had the chance to sit down with people when things were a little bit quieter. We had people enroll online during the benefit fair. I did a couple of quick account reviews as well, and then some of that also spilled over to both virtual and individual appointments. I've got a couple more dates set up to come to visit County Administration Building. And just various locations around the county. I've got a couple dates set up at the hospital. So really just making that effort to be available to your employees. And just want to tell you how much I appreciate the partnership and the effort. I know we're going to be doing this again in October since the county is switching over to a calendar year and away from the fiscal year situation. So I'm looking forward again to just working with you and your team and getting back out to see your employees in October again. So any questions for me? All right. Well, thank you for the chance to join you remotely while I'm in a training out of town. So
Thank you, Brenda. Appreciate that. Any other questions for the local nationwide team? All right. If not, we had another topic that we wanted to sort of reintroduce to the county. I know we discussed this topic at length when the plan converted to nationwide, and that's managed accounts. And we're bringing this up because it's a feature and a service that the county currently does not offer your employees. And we've had lots of requests for professionally managed accounts for employees that need assistance with their investments. And this type of service is very common. We have it on most of our plans now. I think about over kind of 90, I think it's around 95% of nationwide plans offer pro account or managed accounts. We call it pro account. That's our internal name for it. But we've had a lot of our employees ask if there's any way that they can get financial assistance. And it's especially important because when your employees separate service from the county, they're looking for advice and they're not sure what to do with their money. And a lot of the companies that they roll over to are companies that provide advice, like a JP Morgan, for example, where a lot of your transfers go. And so to help conserve assets in your plan and to help your employees save and invest the best they can, we wanted to reintroduce our managed account service. And so we've asked our Vice President of Pro Account, Ben Lozier, to join us today. And Ben's an expert on the product and service itself. And we thought we'd take a few minutes to walk you through how the plan and service works and see if there's any questions from the team. We also sent out a brochure and a fee guide, which provides a lot of information around that. Not sure if you had a chance to look at that, but I wanted to do a time check with the group. We're hoping for around 20 minutes, if that's okay with everyone.
I think that should be fine.
Excellent. Okay. Well, we appreciate that. So Ben, did you want me to share my screen or do you want to share?
I've got it, John. Thank you.
You got it? Okay. So I'll turn it over to Ben. And again, if there's any questions, let us know and take it away.
Thanks, John. And I just want to say good morning to everyone and thank you for having me on to talk about Pro Account. It is a product and a service that's near and dear to my heart, so I appreciate the opportunity. I'll try to stay high level for you because I do understand that I've got 20 minutes and I want to make sure that I'm respectful of your time. But what I hope you get from this conversation is an understanding of how the service works, what it is, where it could fit into your plan, and why it would be a good addition for you to add to your plan. John referred to Pro Account as a managed account service. I think it's more than that. That's the general moniker. I think of it as a personalized investment service. It's designed to provide participants with institutional portfolio management in order to help them meet their goals and objectives. It's a do-it-for-me solution. And for those participants who just don't have the time or the energy or the expertise or the interest to manage their own assets, it's an opportunity to have a professional money manager manage the assets for them. Nationwide Pro Account is offered by Nationwide Investment Advisors. We serve as the fiduciary to participants that are in the program, and we've contracted with Wilshire Advisors as our independent financial expert. And we'll talk a little bit more about that as we go a little further in. As you have in your plan today, you have two different ways for participants to allocate their assets. They can select assets themselves. The do-it-myself type of moniker, folks can pick any investment they want that's in the plan. And then help me do it. And those are more your target date solutions for plans that offer, risk-based models. Those are also help me do it. But most plans are in that target date kind of mantra. Pro account is more of a do-it-for-me solution. I mentioned that before. And some folks ask, isn't this the same thing as a target date? Isn't a managed account and target date very similar? And I would argue they look similar, but they operate very, very differently. And I'll talk about that as I move my way through. First, if you look at a target date, they've had tremendous innovation over the years. They've been a great product for 30 plus years. And I think every plan should have a target date solution. Certainly yours does. You have T. Rowe Price. Those are fantastic. The thing about target dates, though, is they use a single data point to allocate the assets to build the portfolio. And that particular piece is age. So how old are you? That basically determines your portfolio. When do you want to retire? Something along those lines. From a simplicity perspective, that's great. If you're a younger participant or you're somebody who doesn't have a complex financial picture, it's perfect. It gets you exactly where you've got to be. For somebody with a more complex financial perspective and has, more assets in different places and spouses and other assets with them, more customization is needed, and Pro Account can offer that. We can offer up to 14 different data points to be able to use into allocating portfolio's assets. And we also offer 3 separate kind of glide paths, and we'll talk about that a little more in a minute, whereas a target date will only use the one. We will also offer a broader equity allocation. So target dates work better for younger participants. I think managed accounts, Pro Account will work a little bit better for older participants. But one thing that is really clear through the research that we've done is participants, they need help, whatever way they can get it. So I'm going to share some data here around specific to your plan. This chart will illustrate the equity allocation for the participants in your plan. The percentage of equity allocation is that left vertical axis, whereas across the bottom is the age of the participant. There is a black line that's kind of hard to see that's moving from left to right and going from kind of higher to lower, kind of in a diagonal way. That is a moderate portfolio, a general moderate portfolio. It looks a lot like the S&P Target Date Index. The dark gray shade to each side of that is a 10% range, and then the lighter shade is a 20% range. One thing I'll share with you before we get into any further on this is every plan we've looked at for this, it looks exactly like this. Your plan is not an outlier. We see this similar type of allocation across the country. These are your do-it-for-me participants. And what I would say is, the participants in the upper right-hand range are taking on significant equity risk. There are a lot of folks up there that are taking a lot of risk in the equity markets at their given age. They're at a risk for losing at a time when they can't lose. I mean, when you're that much older and later in your lifetime, to have a significant event with the market would be catastrophic to their savings. So that's a risk. Equally, the folks on the bottom left corner, those are folks who run the risk of a shortfall risk. Those are folks that maybe won't save enough to be able to retire the way that they want to. I'd also say that some of these folks are intentionally allocated that way. You go back to those upper right-hand folks with all that equity up there. Maybe they've done really well. They're late into their retirement. Things are doing great. They want to take more market risk because markets generally move higher. And maybe they want to leave assets to their heirs. That's perfectly acceptable. And those folks in the bottom left, maybe they're nervous about what's going on in the world right now, and they want to get more conservative and take risk off the table. Again, perfectly acceptable. I would say those are probably the exception and not the rule. So target dates help with that. And what we see with your target date plan is most of these folks are allocated as they should be across the glide path. But folks don't always use target dates correctly. One thing you'll see is folks will pick more than one target date. I'm going to retire in 2043, so maybe I take the 2040 fund and the 2045 fund and average them. That's not how you do that. I want to put half my assets in my correct target date, but maybe I want to use the other half for my favorite large cap growth fund or the fixed account or something like that. Again, not appropriate. And then sometimes folks just don't know which one to pick. You know, there's a gentleman or a lady here, and I think 32 years old, right down here, that's got 30% in equity. They're in the wrong target date. This person, they're in the wrong target date. People need to know which target dates to get into, and sometimes they struggle with that. What you would see with Pro Account portfolio is a much more streamlined, tight alignment across and within that targeted range that's listed there. Just wanted to highlight that as kind of an update on kind of where the plan is. How would your plan benefit from offering Pro Account? You'd be offering, at a minimum, you'd be offering another option for your participants to be able to select. For those participants who were to select Pro Account, Nationwide Investment Advisor serves as the fiduciary on those, which reduces your fiduciary liability. And while participants would pay a fee for our service, the plan does not. Now, for that fee, participants get professional management from their account from a very well-recognized and institutional firm. Wilshire has 1.7 trillion in assets under advisement, very large, very highly renowned firm that individual participants can't usually access. They get an automatic review of their portfolio on an ongoing basis. Changes to their goals are made, changes to their portfolio may be made. And then they get a 90-day trial period. And how that works is we take fees in arrears. So at the end of every 3 months, we'll take fees for those 3 months. If at any point after initial inception of the account, if a participant doesn't want to stay in Pro Account and they want to terminate, we won't charge a fee for that. We'll give them that free chance to try it out for a couple of months. And then we'll communicate with them frequently. We send, on a minimum, we'll send out 2 communications a year to make sure that participants understand what's going on in the world, as well as, you know, to encourage them to engage with my income and retirement planner, because that helps us to help personalize their portfolios. I've talked about Nationwide Investment Advisors as a fiduciary and Wilshire as our independent financial expert, but what that really means is Pro Account's a nationwide solution. Pro Account is offered by Nationwide Investment Advisors, and we serve as a fiduciary to those participants. And we've contracted with Wilshire to be our investment engine for that. They're doing the strategic allocation, they're doing the portfolio assignment, they're doing the underlying fund selection for what's used in the models out of your plan, and they're periodically making changes to those things, and they'll rebalance on a quarterly basis. When those changes come through, it's Nationwide that implements those. We are the forward-facing part of Pro Account to participants, and we're also overseeing Wilshire as that IFE. We are doing regular meetings with them, kind of intra-quarter. We have a formal investment committee meeting with them on a quarterly basis to review their performance, review how they're doing, making sure that they're staying in line with the process that we hired them to manage. And then we'll do an annual due diligence as well to make sure, again, that things aren't changing or things that they're working on, that we're in line with those as well. End of the day, though, the investment selections that they make, we can't override, we can't influence. They are independent, and we respect that. We did hire them 20 years ago. We launched this program in 2006. They were our initial IFE. They've met and exceeded our expectations throughout. And so we'll continue to monitor them, but we think we have a real differentiator with Wilshire. So how does Pro Account work? Initially, a participant will enroll into the program, and they'll be required at enrollment to fill out a 5-question risk tolerance questionnaire. What that questionnaire does, it allows us to at least identify from a risk perspective, what is their preference for risk for their age. And so a 50-year-old person will be placed in one of these 3 portfolios, moderate, conservative, or aggressive. That is the beginning. That is not the end. What we ask from them following that is to engage with MERP. As they engage with MERP and they provide data into MERP, we can take 14 different data points and use those to better personalize and tailor their portfolio to their particular needs. As you can see on the screen here, there are time horizon pieces, there are assets information, and then there's income and saving sources. All of that information goes over to Wilshire on a nightly basis, and Wilshire is then able to put them into one of 9 particular ranges for their age cohort. So from that, the range of equity exposure is pretty I think pretty impressive. So, from a 50-year-old's perspective, for example, that S&P target date index that I talked about before, it has 77% in stocks. What we can do for a 50-year-old is somewhere between roughly 50% in stocks to 90% in stocks across 9 different portfolios, specifically for those individual participants and their needs. And so here's kind of a really simplistic example of what happens. They come into the plan, they give us the data that's listed there in a table. Wilshire will run Monte Carlo simulations to figure out their likelihood for success in that. In this particular example, someone came up with almost a 75% chance of success of hitting their goals. We want them to be at least at 80. And so what Wilshire will do is they'll continue running those simulations with different portfolios to determine if there's a portfolio that gets them to an 80% or better portfolio. And that's what's depicted here. So we will move them to get them to that better portfolio if necessary. And then this is not what I would call a start and kind of end type of program. This is a continual program. You join Pro Account, you enroll, you provide details. We personalize your portfolio through the help of Wilshire, and then we monitor that. And as your circumstances change, we evolve with that. And that will continue and continue until you get to a point where you don't need the assets anymore. And so we're really proud of the way that we are able to maintain and engage with participants and be able to manage their portfolios throughout their career and then even after and in retirement. The last thing I'll share, and I don't think this is necessarily something that your plan needs given the broad and diverse nature of it, but it's just something to note, is for those plans that want to have a more narrow lineup or do have a need to or want to keep participants from allocating to riskier assets or things that are harder to understand, we offer Expanded Universe. Expanded Universe is a non-core platform. It allows for funds to be used there only by Wilshire and Nationwide for Pro Account. Participants wouldn't see them as an investment option. Participants wouldn't be able to know they were there or allocate to them. The only folks who can be in those are the folks in Pro Account. I think where this comes up mostly is currently with the conversation around private markets. For plan sponsors that want to offer private markets, they need to do it through institutional portfolios like a target date or like Pro Account. This is the way that someone would do that. But looking at your lineup, you've got a lot of diversity and opportunities to build great portfolios. So I don't necessarily think you would want this, but I did want to offer it as a kind of an optional add-on just for your knowledge. I did that very quickly. I'm happy to answer any questions anyone has.
I have a question. I think a while back we did have, I'm not sure it was on this app or a system prior to that where we punch in our data and say, hey, I want to be the most aggressive investor out there, and it kind of did what you are showing here. So if someone were to do that, I'm assuming from what I'm hearing, they would just end up being allocated into a specific fund. They're not doing individual stocks. Is that is that what I'm hearing?
It would be a portfolio of assets that are utilizing the funds that are available in your plan, not individual stocks, and
Correct.
It wouldn't be a single fund.
Correct. So, but again, I remember I thought it was in the app where you put in your age and you could tell it how aggressive you want it to be, and then it'll spit out, here's your allocation. You should put it 80% in aggressive growth, 10% in X, and then you end up picking the stocks into those buckets. Is that similar to
I think that's my investment planner is what you're talking about.
Okay. So
Yep, that is a guidance tool that we have available that also comes from Wilshire.
So now Wilshire is just picking those funds that are going into the allocation. Is that what I'm hearing?
So they're doing that. So are you talking about within my investment planner or
Yes.
within Pro Account?
No, the Pro Account. So again,
Yep.
So similar, you get your makeup, you get to adjust your risk tolerance, and then here's a recommended allocation. That was the other account. But now what I'm hearing is these guys will do it for a fee. You would pick the the funds for those accounts?
That's correct. So my investment planner, what you'd asked about before, that is a point-in-time advice tool. So someone goes in, they enter the information, and they get the allocation at that particular time. Those assets don't get rebalanced. They'd have to come back at a later date and go through the process again to get another portfolio allocation. With Pro Account, you go in, you provide all of your information and data, and Wilshire will allocate you to a pre-mixed set of portfolios. We have 42 portfolios that we offer, but for every age cohort, there are 9. And so you would get allocated to one of 9 different portfolios. Over time, that portfolio gets rebalanced on a quarterly basis. Strategic allocations that Wilshire has get updated on an annual basis. Under certain rare circumstances, Wilshire could allocate and change, mid-quarter if there's something, really different going on in the market. So that's really an active management from a portfolio perspective. On top of that, as your circumstances change and as you update MERP, that will also lead to a potential rebalance of your portfolio into a different portfolio.
Okay. All right, thank you.
You bet.
Ben, this is Jennifer. I've got a question, and it might be helpful to go back to that chart you had where you showed like the age cohorts.
Here?
Yeah, so I think what I'm hearing, and I want to make sure I understand this, if I elected to be in this Pro account, based on my age, I'm limited. I cannot be as aggressive. If I'm 60, I cannot be as aggressive as if I'm 30, even if I would like to be. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yep.
And so I guess I just have a little bit of a concern. I know we want to make sure that we're providing education and guidance to the participants so they make good choices for themselves. But I guess I have just a little bit of concern that, based on my choice, I would be limited in what I could potentially invest in. So if you could kind of address that.
Yeah, I think if you're 30 and you want to be, if you're 60 and you want to be allocated as if you were a 30-year-old, then you probably shouldn't be in Pro Account. You should be selecting your own assets. I would submit that if you're in that scenario and you know that you're 60 and that you should be allocated as a 30-year-old, you're probably more sophisticated than the average participant. And you're you're able to manage your own assets to do what fits for you. Pro Account is more tailored for those folks who don't have that sophistication, who really do need that help.
If I can add a little something just to kind of help with Jennifer's question. So this professional management is great for the average person who really doesn't understand what their investment style is. They don't know what to pick, and they may potentially make investment changes that could harm them during market downturn because of just the fear surrounding watching their balances drop. So when it comes to the allocation, Wilshire helps with that, but the participants also have control over it. So we do offer a form so that if the participant says, you know what, I'm good with my pension, I'm good with my Social Security, this money's legacy money, and I want it allocated for somebody younger, like my children, they can fill out a form and say, okay, Wilshire, I want to move this portfolio to something other than what would automatically be chosen for me. So the participants do have control over how they're investing if they want to give that input to Wilshire. And then Wilshire will make the move for them. So they take the guesswork out of how to do that.
That does help, Brenda. Thank you.
That does. Just for me, just final question. I know that I'm assuming that the funds have a fee and then this program has a fee. I'm hoping that Vincent or someone looked at these fees and they're kind of in line. They appear they appear low, but is it in line with industry standard?
Yeah, they are.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so when I first started with Nationwide, this Pro Account service was available at Merced County. And so I actually had an employee there, a young man who didn't have the time, energy, or interest in trying to figure out and pick and make his own investment changes. So he enrolled in the Pro Account service with Merced County, and then he came to work for San Joaquin. I helped him enroll at San Joaquin. Of course, he was really liking the professional management service experience where he was before, and so he was looking for that again with San Joaquin County. It wasn't available, so he kind of just went with the age-based target date fund where we look at how old you are and how many years you have until you're going to retire, and then we put him in something that was based on his future retirement. And so that is kind of what we did for San Joaquin County, but then he just took a management position not long ago up at Tuolumne County. He was again looking for pro account service there and found it. So employees who have this are doing this because they know that it's a service that they may not be eligible for on their own. I've had people come to me and say, yeah, I talked to a financial advisor, but I didn't have $100,000, so they wouldn't take me on as a client. So people who want this type of service are looking for it, may not be eligible outside of the plan for something like this. And people who are looking for a service like this, these are the people with the balances that their friend at church is saying, hey, when you leave the county, why don't you bring all your money over to me? Well, that's a nice offer. People may not have had that retail experience and are often surprised by how high the fees and charges are. I know that was eye-opening for me. So when I got laid off on my old job working for Mass Mutual, I went to Ameriprise for a year. They charge 1.25%, and Nationwide charges a fraction of this. So Nationwide does a lot of things that people could pay a lot more for in the retail space. So it really is an incentive for them to take advantage of the tools. It gives them a reason to stay in the plan. And of course, the lower the fees and charges, the more of their money they have to spend in retirement. And those are all good things that we want to help people do.
It's, I think the program sounds good. Originally, I thought it was one of those, hey, I'll give my money to a broker, he or she will invest it, which any way he or she wants, and then I could end up with zero or something. But it just seems like I wouldn't say it's not special, but again, I think it's the risk isn't there.
Yeah, to me, I think going back to a couple of the comments that were made, Jennifer, by you when you said, okay, if I wanted to invest riskier. And I agree. I think for some, you're more sophisticated, you know how to invest, but you're not being forced into using Pro Account. But I do feel that there are some employees out there, younger employees that are just starting with the county, and they don't know what to do. So I think if they had a little bit of guidance, it would be helpful. And it's another benefit for them.
Yeah, and I kind of looked at it as an extra fee to pay to ensure, not to dummy-proof your investment choices, but to ensure your the most beneficial choices of your money without having to become a financial planner yourself.
And
Yeah, that's a great point. And that, it's the why behind this. And the why is people want to have confidence about saving for their retirement futures. And so this is one more avenue that's available to them to get that level of comfort with what they're doing and the support that they may not be able to afford outside of the plan because their balances aren't high enough.
I'd like to reiterate kind of what Jennifer asked. Again, for someone like Jennifer who may not need those funds, she may want to invest at the 25 age person. And you said that all they need to do is just sign a waiver. Is that what I heard earlier, Brenda?
Yeah, so,
Perfect.
the ease of customization is available in the plan. So you can either go with the recommendation of Wilshire, or you can say, hey, Wilshire, I'm using this for legacy planning. I want my investments to be a little more aggressive. So it's the easiest filling out a form. You give that direction to Wilshire and they apply that request to your account automatically as part of the service. And again, really easy for people who wouldn't normally know how to make that change in their portfolio. That service is provided to them. And the great thing about this is, as I talk to people, they set these accounts up and they don't look at them for 20 years. And then all of a sudden, the stock market changes and they're concerned about what's happening with their money. And they just feel like perhaps they're unprepared for that. So, they're investing in one thing, whereas maybe it's better for them to have a custom portfolio. It will help them with their spend down of their money in the future, right? If you have one target date fund and the stock market falls, you can't pick and choose how you're going to spend that money down. So this gives them a nice balanced portfolio. So if they want to take their money out, investment specific, so that it will last them longer in retirement, they have a little more choice as they're using this money in retirement. So there are lots of benefits. It also helps people, not just with that, but it also will help them just in terms of the fact that they haven't looked at their balance for 20 years. Human nature is to be comfortable with more risk when we're younger, and not so much as we get closer to using the money. And I can't tell you how many times I've looked at people's portfolio and they've got all their money in the S&P 500, but they're getting ready to retire. And if they hadn't talked to me about it, they would have gone into retirement, maybe not positioned with their investments in the most comfortable way. So having this additional team and service and support is really great.
Maybe I missed it, but is this available for 457 and 401A, since we are doing our shift to the 401A contributions for employer contribution?
The
Yes, it is.
county can, yes, offer it to both. Yeah. So great questions.
Any
Really
other-
appreciate the questions and the engagement, for sure.
Thank you. Any questions or concerns, or do I hear a motion?
Mr. Ponce, I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion and second. All in favor, say aye. Oh,
I just want to be respectful in terms of comments. Should I have done that before the motion, or is now the second time for comments?
I think now would be a perfect time.
Okay, so taking a step back, I work with, thank you. So taking a step back, I work with about 10 record keepers and they all offer managed accounts. And so this is not directed nationwide specifically, though I do in working with those other record keepers, just have some questions that I just wanted to ask. If the county were to offer these, actually, if you can go back to maybe slide 2 or 3, is it Ben? I can't read your name.
Yeah,
Okay,
I'll see
yeah.
what I can do. Yeah.
That at every juncture that really the target date funds and the managed accounts be alongside each other. I do take a slight exception that it's helped me do it because target date funds, and Ben, I know you said that they are different than the target date funds, but really for all intents and purposes, my suggestion that they would be the do it for me solution combined. So that's just one thought. The other part of it too is that I would encourage you as a committee to walk through an enrollment process to see what the participant would go through as they understand really what they're gaining, but also the cost structure. It's displayed on this chart, but I've worked with other record keepers where the fee isn't disclosed to the participants who are signing up. So I would suggest that. The other part of it too is just confirm, and I don't mean all nationwide employees, but maybe the general ones that work with county participants, just confirm that the compensation doesn't change if you elect the service, whether it be at the committee level or at the participant level. Meaning that if there's a growth in managed account assets, compensation structures are enhanced because I think that drives some of the incentives with those participants working. And Ben, I'm sorry, you said it twice and I missed the data points at both times. You said that the MERP could really customize this with how many data points?
So we use an additional 14 data points.
14 data points, okay. Do you know roughly how many participants in Pro Account maximize those data points or have the full 14? Or do generally?
I don't have that.
Yeah, go ahead.
I don't have that number at my fingertips. I do know that what we've seen in the data is that at most plans, participants who are in Pro Account are more engaged with MERP and are more likely to be involved with MERP. We've
Gotcha.
seen that across the country, so I think that's a positive. But I don't know if I could even pull out which of the 14 are more likely to be offered and which ones aren't, because it's really circumstantial as to what those participants actually have in their portfolios.
Fair. And I guess the challenge is, and I think it's the nature of these types of participants or investors that engage at the 5 questions to get the risk and then don't engage anymore. I could be wrong, but that's just been my experience with the other record keepers. And so, again, just encouraging those participants to maximize the customization benefit of these would be important. And then lastly, because there is an additional fee, I'm going through this exact same conversation with another county north of here. And the record keeper is recognizing the enhanced revenue if they were to adopt the managed account service, and they're offering to drop the revenue requirement. I don't think that's necessarily on the table here, but it's something that I would suggest either to Nationwide or this body. So just some things to think about as you walk through this and decide.
The one thing I'll mention there on the incentive to promote Pro Account over something else based on compensation, we do tell a fair and balanced story. It's our intent from a marketing and from a sales perspective that when participants are enrolled or marketed to, that we tell a fair and balanced story. We want to make sure that they understand, and you know, Brenda's probably better equipped to talk about this than I am, but we don't want to benefit one over the other. We want to give participants a balanced look and let them select what they want for their management.
That screen that was just shown, that looked awesome because again, it was kind of proving my first point. Is that what participants see when, Brenda, you meet with them?
You're on mute, Brenda.
Thank you for that question, Vince. I wasn't sure if this screen was showing. So this is what our website shows. That way, if people want to get more information once they've enrolled, they can see all of the options. So the target date fund information is available. That's the default when somebody does our easy enrollment form. It gives them the option to get the support through the investment planning tool, to get the guidance if they want to kind of take the guidance and apply it themselves. But then you have the managed account where you can learn a little bit more, fill out the questionnaire, and then go forward with the service. And as somebody applies for this, we make sure that they know that there's a fee and kind of like a free look period, and that they have the option to opt out of this in the future if they decide it's not for them. Does that kind of help with your question, Vince?
It does with that specific question, yeah. Going back to the compensation, and again, not to drill down or be specific, but would the compensation structure change if the county were to offer this? And let's just say this time next year, there's $20 million in the Pro Account service?
I don't know about change per se. I know that as a standard operation, we do compensate our reps when they enroll folks in Pro Account. What I would say is it's an elective service. Participants can sign up for it or not. And so we do offer it that way. We do have certain plans that don't compensate reps, don't allow us to compensate reps, and we can work with that as well. But I would say that, you know, clearly I think participants need help across the country in plans like yours and some that are different than yours. And I think that, you know, compensating reps may, or I don't know that it necessarily influences that, but it's a conversation we can have.
We can also look at overall plan revenue, Vincent. I think you're asking about that. I mean, if assets grow in Pro Account, we would absolutely reprice this entire plan and work through finance to give concessions back.
sounds good. That doesn't change my motion.
And also, I'm experienced with this, so as I'm talking to people and we are looking at the options, I'm not going to try to steer them to the managed account if they want to have control over making changes themselves. So
that this is an option that may end up being something that helps with that, seeing, less money roll out of the plan. So I do think that I appreciate, Vincent, your questions, and we can certainly make sure the committee is considering those. But I do think that this would end up being maybe something that helps keep some money in the plan. So.
I think Vincent's comments just saved us some money down the line here. So thank you.
Yep.
But I would imagine we would revisit anyways at that time, if it does get up to a certain dollar amount. Personally, I wouldn't use it, but I could see, I gotta take, I'd step out of my shoes and look at someone else who may find it helpful, so.
All right, so at this point, we have a motion and a second. I'll call, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. All right. Thank you Nationwide for your updates. We'll go ahead and move over to Vincent Galindo.
Great, thank you. I don't know if you're going to show it on the screen or certainly you have the materials in front of you. I'll set the stage very briefly on page 4, what we're seeing in the economy. As we moved and closed out 2025, the fourth quarter was dominated, at least from an economic standpoint, by 2 headlines. One was the holiday spend. I mentioned this. After the holiday dust settled, we as consumers set another record in 2025, where in November and December we spent over $1 trillion. And so that was a relatively good news, at least propping up the economy. The downside, which caused a tremendous amount of headwind, was the 43-day federal government shutdown. The federal government, just like the American consumer, spends money, but when they're shut down, they did not. And that was about a 1 to 2% drag on GDP. And so when you take a look at the bottom left of the page, you'll see the fourth quarter GDP flat to positive. It was actually third quarter 4.4%. A lot of economists view a 2 to 3% GDP number as Goldilocks, not too hot, not too cold, rather just right. But flat to positive, given what we saw out of Washington, D.C., or maybe what we didn't see out of Washington, D.C., was completely expected. As we turn the page into 2026, it's not in the book, but the advanced number for the first quarter came in at 2.0%. Over the last couple of days, it was revised downward to 1.6%. So we are seeing somewhat of an uptick in GDP, but nonetheless, a little bit less than that Goldilocks target, which is causing a lot more concern is that middle number, the inflation rate. This is the consumer price index, and the Federal Reserve has a 2% target. Basically, that's their goal of price stability, where costs of goods are increasing a little bit, but not too much. In February, the number was 2.4%. And there were 2, maybe 3 interest rate cuts expected this year. Well, on February 28th, there was the conflict in the Middle East, and inflationary pressures started to tick up. Inflationary pressures is code for costs of goods and services started to tick up significantly. If we travel by air, sea, car, that fuel is going to increase a little bit more. If we buy things that are transported or are transported by air, sea, and land, things are going to tick up. And you'll notice in March, it's 3.3%, ticking up higher. The April number just came out, 3.8%. So off the table are those interest rate cuts. And now there's a coin flip that as we move into 2027, rates will actually be up on the overnight side. And so the conflict in Washington DC is you have the Strait of Hormuz being choked off, the cost of energy spiking, but the new chair of the Fed is being pressured to lower interest rates. And so there is this mixed bag where you have competing interests, but as I said, interest rates will generally be higher as we round out this year. The stock market investors are saying what conflict? If you flip ahead to the next page, take a look at the page 5, middle of the chart, the US large cap equity. This is the S&P 500 index made up of 500 household names like ExxonMobil, Disney, UPS, Nike, etc. You can see for the quarter, negative 4.3%, but the 1-year number was up almost 18%. This data are as of March 31st. The S&P 500 through yesterday is up over 10.5%. So about a 15% swing on the S&P 500. And that growth is driven by the top 7 names. They call it the Magnificent Seven. And they're tied to technology, or more specifically, artificial intelligence. In fact, the Magnificent Seven, out of the S&P 500, those 7 names count to 33% of that return. So basically, the equal weight index is up about 8%. The S&P 500 is up almost 11%. Take a look at the second line from the bottom, the international equity. This is the international markets made up of about 45 countries outside the US. You can see for the quarter, negative 0.7%, but for the year, up 25%. The ACWI ex-US, or All Country World Index minus United States, as of yesterday, up 13.5%. But what's interesting is the emerging market side of this, and some would say it's a little bit old-fashioned or antiquated view, but there's a view of the international markets of developed and developing. So when you think of the developed markets, think Western Europe, Japan. The developing side is more Africa, Latin America, emerging Asia. It's antiquated because you have China, which is deemed an emerging market, but it's in the top 3 economies of the world. Taiwan, South Korea are also considered emerging. But nonetheless, the emerging side is up 25% year to date. And so phenomenal rally around the globe. But I want to go back to the reckoning of the bond market. I think the bond investors have it figured out, because if you take a look, going back to the second line from the top of that chart, the Bloomberg US Aggregate Bond Index, year to date, 4.35%, which is pretty nice. But take a look at the quarter number, negative 0.5%. The ag year to date as of yesterday, flat to positive. Yields have been spiking up and down the yield curve. And so I think the bond market is more of an indicator of what we're seeing in the economy as opposed to the stock market. But what we'll see, one of them is wrong and there's a disconnect. Questions, comments on the economy, on the markets? Okay, flip ahead to page 16. I'll be brief on the rest of the report. John did a really good job about talking about some of the characteristics of the 457 and the 401A plan. You can see in the upper right, just under $670 million across both plans. The pie chart is the broad asset class diversification. You can see about 25% in the navy blue or conservative fixed income or bond category, about a third in that gray portion, which is the large cap, those household names like Amazon, Tesla, Microsoft. And then the yellow portion is those target date models, about a quarter or 25% there. Pivoting from right to left, the middle of the left-hand column, you can see anything worthy to note we'll call out. At the fund level, really nothing to mention this time. From a governance standpoint, we've talked about this before, the updated fee policy and charter, and we also have an update of the investment policy statement today. And then the bottom third. This page is, the optics don't look good, but there's some bad news and a lot of good news in this particular section. So these are the funds that are violating the metrics in your investment policy statement. And you'll notice that there are a number of funds that have violated in the past. T. Rowe Price invests in those tech-heavy names. I mentioned the Magnificent Seven is 33% of the S&P 500. The Russell 1000 Growth, those 7 stocks are over half. And so if you have a fund that trims its position on Microsoft and Tesla and Amazon, you're going to get underperformance just because you can't keep up with the huge run-ups and get a little bit too concentrated and underperform. And so our recommendation is to place that particular fund on watch. The next fund, MFS Midcap Growth, that fund was placed on watch at the end of 2024. According to our cloudy crystal ball, you can see the fund is in compliance. We thought that given the strategy, there was just a short-term disconnect in the markets and it would recover. And sure enough, our prediction turned out to be true. The challenge is it's only one quarter of compliance, and so we'd like to give another quarter of compliance before removing that fund from watch status. Vanguard International Growth. This fund is an aggressive growth manager. It had bad stock selection in Latin America, and so our recommendation is to retain the watch status. And then DFA Real Estate. This is another fund that underperformed, but you can see it's been in compliance for 2 consecutive quarters. Since the book was printed, our recommendation at our internal investment committee is to remove that fund from watch status. So really, really good news there. So if the committee chooses, we can take that fund off of watch, given the 2 consecutive quarters of compliance. And then last but not least, that Invesco Gold and Special Mineral. The run-up in precious metals has been absolutely phenomenal. The fund is on watch, not because of performance issues. In fact, I don't know if you saw, anyone peek what the performance over the last year of that fund was? 95%. So that fund was up 95%, despite the fact that the portfolio manager, Mr. Lee, after multiple decades, decided to leave. There's now 2 co-portfolio managers of that fund. In our constant contact with those 2, we think that the process hasn't changed, but probably remove that fund from watch status at the next quarter. But right now, given the management change from the single to the dual, our recommendation is to keep that fund from on watch. Questions, comments on that particular page?
The Invesco was the one that last time we put it on watch, right, because of that change in management?
Correct. Yeah, it was placed on watch at the last meeting. Yep.
Did you say that you wanted to remove the real estate, the DFA real estate fund off of watch?
Correct.
Okay, the recommendation here has it.
And exactly, after the book was printed,
Okay,
I talked to
gotcha.
our investment team, and because it was in 2 consecutive quarters, their recommendation is to change that text on page 16, bottom right, and remove it from watch.
Thank you.
Yes.
Should we go ahead and take action on those 2 while we're reviewing those?
Sure.
So first, to remove the DFA real estate securities, do I have a motion to remove?
I'll make the motion.
In a second.
I'll second.
All right, I have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5-0 to remove DFA real estate.
Okay. And I'll be brief, as I said, not to discount any information, but just not to be redundant to John's report. On page 18, just very briefly, focusing on the bottom half of the page, the navy blue columns, this is the weighted return of the investments within the 457 program. You can see for the quarter, negative 2.1%. Despite that loss of over 2%, the annualized number is still up over 12% at 12.19%. And then the 3 year is about 11.25%, and then 6.5% annualized over 5 years. And then speaking of the investment options, on pages 19 and 20, these are all the choices that participants can choose from, and then what Nationwide/Wilshire can choose between the options for those pro account users. So there'll always be the funds on the San Joaquin County's menu. You can see all the funds on the left-hand side, grouped by asset class, ranked generally in risk order. Beginning balance, any cash flow, money going in, money leaving, gains, losses, and then ending balance. And then that percentage is not the performance number, rather it's the portion of the pie, if you will. And then you have funds that invest in large company, mid-sized company, small cap, international, those countries outside the US like Mexico, Canada, Poland, Brazil. The asset allocation model managed by T. Rowe Price that Benjamin talked about, and then the specialty, the real estate and that gold and special mineral fund. And then flipping ahead to page 23, I will be repetitive to John here because the stats are pretty impressive. On page 23, a growth of about $85 million in assets in the 457, which is fairly impressive. What's even more impressive is the bottom row, second from the bottom, the number of participants. Thanks to the county staff, Brenda, Nationwide, way back in 2021, there was about 6,300 participants. As John mentioned, a growth of about 1,600 over the last few years, just under 8,000. So nice growth rate in accounts. The high-class problem, though, is as you get more bodies, the accounts are pretty small. The average account balance actually dropped, but I'd rather see that short-term dip with the growth in bodies participating in the plan and saving for their future. So good news all around. The 401A, as you can see on pages 26 and 27, that should look fairly familiar because it's the exact same menu. And back to the point, the question, if the pro account participant uses the exact same menu for the managed accounts, the forfeiture account at the bottom right of page 27, you can see just over $75,000. And then the growth rate on page 30, about $10 million. So not as significant as the 457, but nice growth rate nonetheless. And then the participant count is relatively static. And it was mentioned before in terms of the county contribution going into the 401A. When will that or did that happen?
July 6th.
July 6th, okay, thank you. Okay. Flipping ahead, unless there's any questions on the performance, there's no issues. I do want to conveniently land at the bottom of page 40, or I guess the bottom of the chart, which would be the middle of top. Back to my point about that Invesco. This is where I got the 94.8% last year, beating the benchmark by about 25%. But I will go on. The fee structure on page 42, this is the 457. Each period has a column, and each column has made up of 3 colors. The light blue is the investment cost. This is what participants pay directly to the fund managers. It has decreased, not by much, but way back in 2021, it was 35 basis points or 0.35%. You can see it dropped by a couple basis points to 32.5-ish basis points. But I do want to focus on the navy blue and the orange portion. The navy blue is what you as a committee can use for plan-related expenses to benefit 457 participants. And then that orange portion, which is really 2.25 basis points, this is what Nationwide needs as a revenue requirement to staff a call center, send out statements, et cetera. And then going back to the light blue portion on pages 43 and the top of page 44, every fund has an expense ratio as conveyed on the second or right-hand column. These are a little bit different, maybe a lot different than our fees in our everyday life, insofar as the fund manager simply deducts his or her fee before reporting the performance to you net of this fee. But it adds up. And so the far right column is the dollar amount, and you can see on a $625 million program, 32.5 basis points is just over $2 million. It's important to note that we're working on the target date funds to drop those fees by 10 basis points. You can see the T. Rowe Price Trust at 37 basis points. Those will go down to 27 basis points, and given the assets at about $175,000, depending on assets in the day of annual savings. So we're working on that to save participants that $150,000, $200,000 a year. And then back to the navy blue and orange portion, the top part of the page, 44, the plan administrative costs, you can see that 2.25 or rounding up to 2.3 is about $140,000 a year to Nationwide, and then the committee captures about $220,000 a year to pay for plan-related expenses. And then I'll skip the 401A because, not that it's unimportant, but just in the interest of time, and land on page 49. This is the accounting to the dollar of that plan-related budget. So you can see almost like an old-school passbook savings account. You get your beginning balance for the quarter, any contributions, any growth, distributions, and then the ending balance. Again, that's that function of the navy blue portion that you can spend for plan-related expenses like training, fiduciary insurance, legal, audit, consulting, et cetera. Questions, comments on that report? Okay, keep going. Okay, the next item has to do with the investment policy statement. Essentially, the investment policy is the guidebook or roadmap that we all use as a committee, the plan administrator, your fiduciary consultant, on the selection, the monitoring, the termination, the watch of the investment options in the plan. And one job, from a fiduciary standpoint, is to have a good process. The other part of it is to have a document and follow that document and process. So once a year, I don't want to say we dust this off because we follow it, but really we take a deep dive and make any suggested changes so that you can ask questions, approve or not. Obviously, the first one is more housekeeping. The year is changing on the cover, and on the next page is the table of content. I don't really know what's changed because it seems like 11 moved to 11 and 12 moved to 12, but I wanted to call that out nonetheless. More meaningful changes are on pages 5 and 6. And let me explain the change because it looks almost benign at first glance, but there are about 45 target date providers. The county uses T. Rowe Price, but Fidelity has a target date fund, Vanguard, BlackRock, State Street, the list goes on. Early on, we really wanted to, given the glide path that Ben put up early on, that various money managers use different glide paths. And to more compare apples to apples, we decided to use T. Rowe Price's custom blended so that we don't get lost in what Vanguard is doing or what BlackRock is doing. We felt that that was a little misguided and we got a change of heart. We wanted to use Morningstar's standard, or I think Ben uses S&Ps, to use a more standardized and ironically to compare more apples to apples against BlackRock, to T. Rowe Price, to Vanguard, to Fidelity, et cetera. So now we're using the Morningstar Target Retirement to compare T. Rowe Price with other providers. And so we're moving away, or at least suggested moving away from the custom to more of the standard Target Retirement Index. And you can see that on the 2 boxes on page 5 and the 2 boxes on page 6. So I'll pause and see if that makes sense or if you have any questions.
Vincent, a question in regards to moving over from the those benchmarks. Is there a fee? Is there a subscription to get that data, or do you already have that data?
We have all that data.
Perfect,
Yeah.
thank you.
It was just more a philosophical shift. Okay, turn to page 7. Our investment committee also felt that we should expand the list of high-income issuers and move away from the Bloomberg junk bond or high-yield index and move to the Bank of America. There really isn't much difference. In fact, when I looked at the 10-year number of both indexes, the difference is 9 basis points or 0.09%. We just felt the Bank of America is a little bit more diversified, and the minimum market cap of Bloomberg is 150 million. The minimum for Bank of America is 100 million. There is a little bit difference in terms of foreign exposure, but it's super slight. We just felt that going forward, the Bank of America index was more appropriate than the Bloomberg, and so we'll be incorporating that into our reports if the committee chooses to accept this change. And again, the cost would be non-existent because we have access to both Bloomberg and Bank of America. We just felt one was more better than the other. And then on page 12, we just keep a running tab of the history. And so given the last update in 2025, we're going to continually update this section as the 26 rolls into 27.
I think I had a comment about that last time, and you look at this schedule here, I don't know if it brings any value. I can see the date that it was adopted was great, but then you have these dates of when it changed. I think the argument before was, it was if you were to go back and look at and see why it changed, I guess you could go back and look at the minutes, but I don't see any value in this chart. I think all we need is, hey, the last time it was updated was X or something like that. If you do the math in 2040, that you'll have a whole page, just the dates alone. So those are my comments. I think the last time, it was just to be what word I use, say nice, but I just not nice, but not argumentative. I think I said, hey, we'll go ahead and keep it that way. But I would recommend just to just say, hey, this is when it was updated and remove that history portion. I don't see any value in it.
Most current revision date only, yeah.
So you would propose the adopted date and then maybe last amended
Yeah,
date
just-
and then
just-
this current amendment?
The way we have it on our investment policy is just the front page will say last updated on this or something, approved on this date or something like that. That's all you need. I don't think you need a running history. Again, you're not saying, hey, in 2020, what changed on June 23rd? I guess we could go back, but does that bring us any value to it? I don't think so.
Yeah, I would say to keep it clean, I would say just use updated, last amended, because if you say it was adopted in 14 and then last amended of 25, I think then that question's like, well, that's the first time that they looked at it, and,
Okay.
So.
I'm just thinking of like how we have some other policies. How would the committee feel about on the front page, maybe like a footnote that shows original adoption date? I just think that's helpful at some point, but I understand what you're saying when you look at it, this all together.
And if you only use the top and the bottom, I think that infers that we
Right.
haven't looked at the policy for 12 years. But I do understand what Fonseca is saying. Pretty soon, we're going to end up with a page and a half.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, I guess I like the idea of keeping the original adoption date, but I appreciate so I'm just wondering if we could separate them somehow on the document, so.
Couldn't you put the adopted portion in the introduction and background on page 2? And then somewhere in the document, say, hey, it was adopted in this or approved in this date or something like that.
There
Yeah.
is, in HR, when we have like our policies, our procedures, and even on our specs, we do keep the dates on there for historical records, but it doesn't say like amended by the plan administrator director each time. It just says like January 10th, comma, 6/23, comma, so it has the dates on there, so that's also a suggestion. If we did want to keep the historical accuracy, we don't need to have it listed out in this same way.
On section 2, on page 2, that purpose section, that last sentence says, as stated in section, was it 14 below? That's the history. The last update to the policy was in July. So we're actually amending it to show June, so that would have needed to be changed also, but. So if we just remove the history section and include the adoption date in the purpose, and then maybe somewhere on the face, last update, something like that might work.
I just want to get rid of the history section. That's all I want to do.
We're working with you here, Fonseca. We're just trying to make sure everybody's.
I'll leave it up to everybody else to make the changes, send it back for administrative changes, but yeah.
Yeah, I think Jeff has it right, and purpose, section 2, have the adoption, last updated, fixed, obviously, and then the cover has all of them, right? The most relevant is when it was adopted, the last amendment,
Yeah.
and the most recent. Is that-
That'll get rid of the history section.
It does, you would have to change it. Excuse me, I think you would have to change that sentence, though, because it does
definitely,
say, as stated in the
Yeah.
section 14 below.
All right, so how about this? I think this will address everyone's. If that last sentence becomes, instead of, we'll get rid of as stated in section below, we can say this policy was originally adopted 2014, and was last updated,
Perfect,
Yep,
perfect.
right?
yes.
You would think,
Fonte doesn't wanna
yeah,
be
you would think that'd
argumentative.
be in the introduction section, right? Say, hey, that it was, this policy was, originally adopted at so-and-so. Again, I like the idea of, hey, look at the first page, we know when it was, approved, May 2026. It's minor stuff, it's just.
But the only contradiction to that is the introduction section doesn't talk about the policy. The
Yeah.
policy
Yeah.
first gets
Purpose.
introduced in the
Policy.
purpose section.
Yeah.
All right.
I think it would be helpful if we could also maybe add a sentence that this policy is reviewed on an annual basis, and the last update was whatever the last update is. So that for history's sake, everyone knows that we do review it annually, and it's probably been changed throughout the years.
All right, so we will propose eliminating the history section at the end and changing that last sentence in purpose two to read that the policy was originally adopted in 2014, is reviewed annually, and was last updated on, it would be
That
today's
sounds
date.
wonderful. Sounds wonderful.
What a good working group we have.
I'm not saying someone moved south, but we just had this conversation about the IPS in a county south of here. And one first comment was, where's the history section? Like, we don't have that. So they want to add.
Oh, boy. I think people get accustomed to seeing it one way, but when you ask yourself logically, take a step back, what does it do? It doesn't do anything, so.
We want to be different, Vince.
All right,
Difference is good. All right. I think that's it for me.
okay, so do we want to make a motion to accept with the changes as stated?
I'll make a motion to accept those changes to the policy.
Sponse, I'll second.
And all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. All right, Oriana, you are up.
So I just wanted to let everybody know that we did go to the board and they approved the 457 to 401A contributions for the employer contributions. Those will begin on July 6th. So that's the first day of that pay period where staff will start to see those contributions shifting over to the 401A. So we'll be working with Nationwide over the next 30 days or so to get that going. Any questions on that one?
I assume that employees are all going to be notified
Yes.
ahead of time, yeah, okay. Or reminded. if they
Yes,
were already
reminded. We already
notified.
sent something
Yeah,
out
yeah.
a while ago, but we will
Just a
also
reminder,
remind. Yes. The fee schedule and charter was also approved at that same Board of Supervisors meeting. So I know that we went through that fee schedule and charter together before submitting it to the board for approval. So that was also approved. So just wanting to give you guys the update on that. And the NAGDA conference, which NAGDA is spelled wrong, with the NAGDA conference is coming up. I do have some folks who have already stated that they are going. So if you haven't made your full accommodations yet, please make sure to reach out to Donna. Right now, I have Jeff and Dawn are both fully registered. Sandy, Fonse, myself, we are all registered for the conference, but I think that, and hotels, I believe, but I think we're doing our own flight reservations, so we'll need to get Donna that information. And then Kim, I have you registered hotel accommodations, and then I'm not sure what your status is yet of the flight. I don't know if you already worked with Donna on that, but wanting to remind you of that. And if there's anybody else that has the intent of going, please let us know, but I think that's everybody. So that's all I have.
All right. Next, we have comments from committee members.
Just like to say thank you. I know, Jennifer, this is your last meeting. I know you missed this tremendously. I'm happy that the Deferred Comp Committee is in HR, so let's keep it that way. But anyways, happy retirement.
Thank you.
I would also like to add and just say thank you, and you're going to be missed, and now you can go to any conference with us, but you just have to pay for it.
Thank you.
So I guess Sandy, if she's the one that would be taking over in your absence, and
So that'll motivate her to make a selection on my replacement. All right. Yeah, until there's a new, and obviously that you have 3 months until the next committee meeting. So hopefully you'll have a hire before then. Somebody will have started before then, or else everybody's going to be crying. All right, if there's nothing else, then I'll call the meeting to close. Thank you.
All right, thanks, everyone.